You?
Yeah.
You good? Good evening, everyone, as you take your seats and our meeting and program begins. So grateful to all of you for spending time here with us this evening for this, our third public meeting of the New York State Commission on African American History. We will be officially welcomed into this space by a fantastic leader of the entity that we are partnering with to have this meeting tonight, the University at Albany Africana Studies Department Chair, Dr. Marcia Sutherland. Let's give her a hand. She welcomes us. I think it is important for you to know that as we go around across the state to host these meetings, it's critically important to have supportive partners that we can rely on to provide space and support and also connections to members of the community so that the work we're doing really takes root and comes alive. No sooner than we sent the invitation out did Dr. Sutherland positively respond that the Africana Studies Department here at the University of Albany would be helpful to us and would say yes to our request. So on behalf of the commission, thank you so much for your willingness. You've been a fantastic host so far, and I look forward to the rest of the event and continuing our partnership with you. Dr. Marcia Sutherland, ladies and gentlemen.
Give you a big hug. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Department of Africana Studies, it is my deep pleasure to welcome the New York State Commissioners on African American History. Also, a special welcome to Dr. Robert Rodriguez, who is the chairperson of the commission. You're welcome, sir. And a special and distinguished guest here is Dr. Hazel Jukes. Dr. Jukes, where are you? Oh, she is. She's the president of the NAACP in New York State Conference and the vice chairperson of the commission. She has a distinguished career, very dedicated to serving others. And so we are grateful that she is today. Welcome to Stacy Lynch, the Chief of Staff for the Governor. Where is Stacy? She's not here yet? Okay, you can let her know she was welcomed. We also, the Department of Africana Studies, I want to recognize Jennifer Burns, who did such a great job to bring 7 organizations that have exhibits here today. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for your wonderful work. We are also grateful to the efforts of those organizations setting up the exhibits. So they welcome to the campus of Albany University. Finally, welcome to all the attendees for today's meeting. I know we're going to have a wonderful discussion, and I know there are going to be many questions for the commissioners and so forth. So without delay, we will hear from the Dean of CAST. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sutherland. We will now hear from Dr. Jeanette Altariba, Dean, University at Albany College of Arts and Sciences.
Good evening. I know we're kind of between afternoon and evening, but good evening and welcome to all. And I have to say, I have a script, a few things to say, but I'll try to make it lively and short for you. But before I say anything, I just have to say that meeting all of you here right now has given me such a sense of community. because I'm not often, with a group of folks like all of you, listening to your stories, seeing the exhibits and so on. So I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled that this has happened. And all I can say to our distinguished guests and folks who are here is, can we do more of this? Can you please call us here? And I've said to some too, because my background is Latina. And so I'm very happy to do this in more than one language if people would like that at some future point as well. But it's really inspired me to meet all of you and have you here today. So thank you for being here. Introduced by Maria, and I'd like to say that I'm really honored to be introduced by someone who's such an enormous change maker in the fight for racial healing and relationship building. As an advisor to the New York State Commission on African American History, Maria has introduced the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Framework to inform the Commission's work. Governor Kathy Hochul established the commission in 2022 with a goal of bringing New Yorkers together through events like this, cultural programming, scholarly research, and other activities that promote greater understanding of the, we know, often overlooked history and achievements of African Americans and people of African descent throughout the state. So I'm very proud to be here to welcome everyone to the University at Albany on behalf of the administration, the faculty, and staff. We're so grateful that I understand UAlbany is the first SUNY school to co-sponsor and host a New York State CAAH Forum meeting event. Now, the UAlbany faculty in Africana Studies have worked with local institutions in this field of research well before the commission was created. And I myself, I've been here about 30 years now. And I can say I've always been so excited to be part of a community that welcomes this department and has such strengths in the Department of Africana Studies. And with that, I'm equally proud of Dr. Jennifer Burns, who has served as the on-campus liaison and helped to organize here together with Maria and Joanne Fernandez as well. So, if you've toured all these exhibits, I'm so proud to say that Dr. Burns is the individual who proposed the idea, coordinated the exhibits, and you have individuals and information here that spans from Albany to Schenectady to Rensselaer and beyond. So thank you so much, Dr. Burns. And I'd also be remiss, and to me, it's not an issue to say names again and to thank people again. The thank yous have to be endless because folks have put in so much effort, but really so much passion into their work. So I would be remiss if I did not mention the contributions of Dr. Marcia Sutherland, our esteemed chair of one of my departments in the college, the Department of Africana Studies, whose steadfast guidance, support, and advocacy for these events is unwavering and so highly esteemed. So I like to take every opportunity to thank Dr. Sutherland for elevating the status of this work and for all of your efforts over all of these many years. Thank you. So many people have registered for today's event, which is so exciting. And shortly, we will hear a performance by another Africana Studies faculty member, Reverend Dr. Roxanne Book, to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And we will be enjoying our panel, Black Women's Contributions to Civic Life and Democracy in New York State. I'm not sure that C.G. Dodds is here, an associate professor of law at Albany Law School, but Dr. Hazel Dukes, president of the NAACP New York State Conference, a member of the NAACP National Board of Directors, and vice chairperson of the New York State Commission on African American History, is here with us this evening. Welcome. Jennifer Jones-Austin, CEO of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies and Commissioner of the New York State Commission on African American History, is here with us as well for our panel. So with that, I leave you in the hands of our moderator and our host this evening. And again, sincerely, I'm so grateful to be here, but the sense that I have of meeting all of you and having you all in one room is really indescribable to me as an educator and a scholar and a woman of color here as well. So thank you for being here. You've really made my night, if not my week here. And let's enjoy the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Altariba. And as she mentioned, we will be hearing and led in the singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing by Reverend Dr. Roxanne Booth, who is a faculty member here at the Africana Studies Department at SUNY Albany. As she comes to the microphone, I encourage each of you to be prepared for what we're going to participate in, the singing of this lovely anthem, all three verses in its completion. Sometimes you're not sure what's going to happen. All three. If you don't know all three, it's a good time to open up your ears and listen to all three, or you can use your lovely devices and look up all the verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing. But if you happen to know all three, sing them loud and proud if you sing on key. If not, keep it low key, as the youth say. So, Reverend Dr. Roxanne Booth, thank you so much for leading us in the singing of this beautiful and really history-telling anthem.
Let's all stand. Lift every voice, sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing skies, let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. The rising sun begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn, yet with a steady feet, come to the place for which our people sighed. We have come over a way with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of past, God of our weary years, God of tears, that
born thus far on the way thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in thy path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget. Shadowed beneath, may we forever stand true to our God, to our native land. Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Booth, and to everyone for singing that hymn along. Moving right along, we will now officially call to order this meeting and have opening remarks by our chair for the commission, Secretary of State, Robert J. Rodriguez. Please welcome him.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm honored to be serving as Governor Hochul's chairperson of this very prestigious commission. But before we begin, I want to, of course, thank the University of Albany and President Javier Rodriguez, who's not with us, but who so graciously offered his facilities when we met earlier this month. And of course, to the Dean of the College Arts and Sciences, Dr. Dariba, for hosting us this evening. Thank you for your graciousness. Also want to extend a very special thank you to Dr. Sutherland, the head of the department, and of course, Dr. Burns, who will be moderating this panel and who has so graciously helped partner with us for this event. And of course, to the staff, all the UAlbany team who have come together to bring this really wonderful event here for us. And importantly as well, thank you, Dr. Burns, for the exhibitionists, for the Hart Clouet Museum in Troy, to the Schenectady County Historical Society, the New York State Archives, the Albany Institute of Art and History, the Underground Railroad Education Center, and the Rapp Road Historical Society, reminding us of all the intersections here in the Capital Region with the African American community and its history. And I want to, of course, thank our commission members who are here at this time, especially Commissioners Hazel Dukes, Jennifer Jones Austin, William Berry, and Dr. Small, who are here with us. Of course, want to acknowledge in absentia, because they're probably working very hard on the budget right now, some of our colleagues in government, Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who wanted to be here with us, as well as State Senator Sama Brock and Assemblymember Alicia Heineman. But we know they're doing the people's work in just down the street. Now this meeting will come to order. In 2022, by executive order, Governor Hochul announced the creation of the New York State Commission on African American History. Our purpose is to strategize, brainstorm, and ultimately present ideas that recognize the full histories, the rich legacies, and the cultural contributions that have been made in our state and in our nation by African Americans and Black New Yorkers in spite of every barrier, obstacle, and persecution they have faced. And the commission is comprised of highly accomplished and dedicated public servants and academics, and have been gathering over the last year to decide how we ensure that New Yorkers have a better understanding of our history. And this is to ensure that African Americans and Black New Yorkers are uplifted and recognized for their beneficial impact on the health, economic prosperity, public safety, and general welfare of all New Yorkers. And we'll do this by partnering with community-based organizations and by bringing New Yorkers into the conversation through events, activities, cultural programming, scholarly research, and other endeavors. It's a recognition that has taken far too long, and I thank Governor Hochul for making this a priority as we strive for a more inclusive future here in the state of New York. Now, one thing that has not changed is that we need to draw inspiration and guidance from the past. To build an inclusive future, you have to know your past, and in order to draw guidance and work towards that, that's the only way forward towards an inclusive present and future. And I think it's interesting that this is Women's History Month, and the commission is appropriately highlighting Black women and engagement in our democracy and our society. Now, when you take a closer look at female pioneers who trailblazed their way and in turn paved the way for those who followed, we have some really significant African-American women who have done that. For example, names that you may not be familiar with and some names that you are. But for example, Dorothy Height, the president of the National Council of Negro Women, who was often the only woman at the table of national organizations. And now we have Dr. Dukes, which goes to show that legacy exists here today. Shirley Chisholm, a name we may remember, but for more recent generations, perhaps not. The first Black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress, was famous for making sure that we had a seat at the table and demanding that if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Or Constance Baker Motley, who was the first African-American woman to argue a case before the Supreme Court. As a former legislator, I have to give special respect to Bessie Buchanan, who became the first Black woman to be elected to the New York State Assembly in 1954. And of course, Harriet Tubman, the ultimate freedom fighter. We have all claimed her. She is the Moses of her people. Her final resting place is here in Auburn, New York. And it's important that we recognize and continue in all parts of the state, most recently announced in Binghamton, recognition for her efforts to liberate enslaved individuals, leading them to freedom through the Underground Railroad. Those are some of the historic women who have impacted our democracy as a whole and changed our society, that we may not always be celebrating in Women's History Month, but we should be. And that's very much intertwined with the work of this commission to make sure that those stories are told. So with that, with no further ado, we want to make sure that we give space to the powerful and meaningful exchange of ideas through this panel discussion. We have a wonderful panelists here who we are proud to call commission members. And I just want to remind members of the public who are interested in commenting on either the work of the commission or on the panel that we'll have an opportunity for those comments towards the end. And we are looking forward to those because our mission does not get fully realized until there is true public discourse and engagement and feedback. So we look forward to that as well. So with that, I turn it back over to Maria to begin the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Secretary Rodriguez. And we are now ready to invite our panelists and moderator to take their seats for this panel. You've heard her mentioned several times already, but let's give it up one more time for our moderator, Dr. Jennifer J. Thompson Burns. Lecturer in the Department of Africana Studies here at University of Albany. She earned her master's and doctoral degrees in American history from the History Department here at Albany, and her doctoral dissertation, Black Trojans, the Grassroots Abolition Campaign of the Free Black Community in Troy before 1861, won her the award for 2019 Distinguished Dissertation Award. And of course, we see the fruits of her labor and her true gift, not only in intellect, but in relationship here tonight. We are also joined by Vice Chair of our commission, Dr. Hazel Dukes. She serves as vice chairperson of the New York State Commission on African American History. Dr. Dukes is an active and dynamic leader who is known for her unselfish and devoted track record for improving the quality of life in New York State. Dr. Dukes is president of the NAACP New York State Conference, a member of the NAACP National Board of Directors, a member of the NAACP Executive Committee, as well as an active member of various boards and subcommittees. There's much more we could say about Dr. Dukes, but in the interest of time, we are in the presence of a legend and an icon. We are also joined by another commissioner, Jennifer Jones Austin. She is the CEO of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies. Specifically, Ms. Jones Austin is noted for work to bring greater understanding to the links between race, poverty, law, and social policy in the United States. Ms. Jones Austin's previous roles include Senior Vice President of the United Way of New York City, Deputy Commissioner for New York City Administration for Children's Services, and a Civil Rights Deputy Bureau Chief in the Attorney General's Office. Jones Austin is also an author of Considerate Joy, a memoir that reveals her personal account of a life-threatening illness and how she overcame it. Another legend among us. We had space for additional panelists who are not with us at this time. And while we do miss them, and I want to acknowledge Sidney Dodds and Stacy Lynch, they would have had so much to offer here on this panel. I assure you what we have is more than enough. And this is going to be an amazing panel. I turn it over to the panelists. Thank you.
Here we go. Now on. Excellent. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, for visiting the exhibits, and then also, of course, for our panelists here because of the wisdom that they have to share, and also reminding us that you have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, when it comes to how African-American women in particular become engaged creatively in changing and impacting democracy. And we had a number of questions prepared for tonight, right? I think maybe one of the best things to do is start with some advice, right? Some advice for the next generation, based on your experience, on exactly how they can become more engaged in democracy and participate in civic activism.
Thank you so much. Where's that NAACP family out there? Raise your hand. I heard you talk. Well, to the next generation, the now generation, it's a tough road. I encourage you to take the 3 C's. There are 3. Courage, commitment. Sorry. Take the 3 C's. Courage, commitment, and conviction. You can't do it if you don't believe in it. You can't excel if you don't have the courage. It takes courage to stand up against the male-dominant force that we have in the American democracy, making rules when we're not at the table. And so many of the issues that confront us today is because people like my grandmother, whose name should be called, she was a Harriet Tubman in her time. And I am my father's child. My dad was a Pullman porter. He was a union man. And so some of the give and gab of the loud mouth from me came because my dad encouraged me. Being the only child and being the daddy's girl, I was allowed to listen with the little ears, You know, children wasn't supposed to speak, but I would eavesdrop and listen. And I understood at an early age, guys, guess what? I met A. Philip Randolph at an early age. And seeing these powerful people in your life to find what they were doing and what they were saying in our behalf gave me to take the 3 C's.
Powerful. I'm going to piggyback on what you said and just share that so much of who we are and what we become, what we believe we can be, is informed by the people around us, our experiences and our exposure. And some of us often have greater exposure. What is important to note is that nobody is any greater or any more gifted than the next person. Some people are purposed to live certain lives that have greater prominence, but that doesn't mean that you can't do your part. So in my case, very much like Mama Dukes, Dr. Dukes, who has long been an inspiration and a role model for me, you know, I had her. I knew of her. I grew up, I shared earlier today with our fellow commissioners, 2 doors down from Shirley Chisholm. You know, what happens when you grow up in an environment like that? My father was the president of the New York chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Martin Luther King Jr. slept in our home. It creates in your mind this belief that you are somebody even before you get started. But what's important for me is letting people know that you don't have to have somebody tell you you are. Rid yourself of that narrative that people want you to own that you aren't, unless they have ordained you to be somebody. The other thing that I'll add is that I think one of the greatest disservices that many have done, that has been done to particularly people of color and people of African descent in particular, is this notion that there can only be one, that there is only one, that if you don't achieve at the level Martin Luther King Jr. did, then you're not excelling, you're not succeeding. This notion that if your name is not being talked about on some television program or some radio station, or you're not being liked on social media, that what you're doing doesn't have meaning or value or impact. And so the importance of finding your voice, owning your voice, not looking for somebody else to give it to you, seeing your worth and your value, and understanding you have purpose. It's where you have to begin. Because in the world in which we live, people aren't going to say, oh, she's got purpose or he's got purpose, unless they somehow want to own and control your narrative. Into your voice, even if somebody's not giving it to you, recognizing it, is where you have to begin. You may not be surrounded by the people whose names are called all the time. Doesn't mean that you don't have voice and you don't have value. Find it from within and then you move.
It's not working. There we go. As both of you were talking, what really struck me also is, you know, often when people talk about Black women getting involved in democracy in the 20th century or the 21st century, many people's minds immediately go to the South and the civil rights movement and Black women who were there. And we often forget that so many Black women were here in New York State throughout history, becoming involved in engagement with democracy and in activism and at the grassroots level, right? Like Ella Baker, right? She really was pushing for that grassroots organizing, and her name was always pushed to the back or behind Martin Luther King Jr. and others, right? But she was that grassroots, what both of you are talking about, the 3 C's, and maybe not always being at the front, but always improving your local community and having that spread and grow higher and higher and higher right here in New York State and around throughout our grassroots local communities. That makes me, move us to our next question, which is in the present day, as African-American women and other women of color are engaging in new possibilities, in shaping democracy, in informing democracy, we tend to hear this argument posed that there's a major generational gap between the old civil rights generation, right, and the new Black Lives Matters movement generation. Do you think that that is true? And if it is, or if it is not, right, can you speak to that a little bit more? We'll start with Dr. Dukes.
It's not true, because if it hadn't been for me, there wouldn't be no Tamika Mallory. So there's no generation gap, because what I see that I have poured into other young women. I don't know how many of you know Tamika Mallory. How many of you have ever heard the name? See what I mean? Yvette Clarke, who's a congresswoman, it was her mom. They have the dual rank of mother and daughter. Her mom went to the city council. Yvette succeeded her mom. Yvette now is in Congress. The first African-American woman in city government was Mary Pinkett from Brooklyn. And then came Priscilla Wooten. As Jennifer said, you don't even know these names. You don't know them. Look who we have in the city council now. We have a speaker in New York City. The speaker, first time in the history. You know why? Because more women was elected. More women, Black and brown women. It's made up. Look at our Congress. Look who's there now. That's making a difference. That's why they're afraid, because when we're in the room, young sisters, we make a difference. We get past the politics that the men get involved in. We think about our children. We think about our seniors. We think about our communities. We take the labor off of being a Republican and being whatever, green tea, pot tea, whatever. We take those issues away, right, and we confront the issues that concern the communities. Whenever women step into the room in corporate America, wherever, it changed. We haven't made all the changes. But we made the changes, and the changes we made are for you. For the next generation, for the now generation, for you. We expect you to make SUNY Albany. A lot of people have gone through before you, but we expect you to leave a legacy too. You just can't sit back on your laurels about what someone else have done. You have to put on now. You have to make some decisions about how you want New York State to be the Empire State. With all its glory that we have, this beautiful campus and all of these great things we have, but we still do not have equity.
You're spot on, and as you talk, Dr. Dukes, I can't help but think about the words of the educator, sociologist, scholar who lived in the second half of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, Anna Julia Cooper, the fourth African-American woman to earn a PhD. She said, "Only the Black woman can say when and where I enter in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole race enters with me." What Anna Julia Cooper was speaking to is just what Dr. Dukes was talking about, that when the Black woman enters the room, she carries her entire community. She carries the struggle of the men in her life, whether it be her fathers, her uncles, her brothers, her sons, her grandsons. She carries the struggles of her sisters, her mothers, her aunts, her daughters, her nieces, her granddaughters. She carries her own struggle of not being seen and heard, the duality of being Black and woman in this world. She never leaves it outside. And she knows that until she is respected, recognized for her full worth, that our society will not be all that it should be. She knows that when she is paid today, 64 cents on the dollar compared to what a white man earns, when she earns a graduate degree and now is just being paid just $1,500 more than a white man with an associate degree, she's not respected and she's not valued. And that's going to impact her family, her children, causing her children to live in poverty disproportionately. She brings it all. So she's not bringing party affiliation. She's not stepping in the space for herself. She's not concerned about whether she gets another 4 years in office. She's bringing the issues forward. And so when we talk about division or divide, we don't have that luxury to be different than, our ancestors were, or try to back and keep our sisters who are younger than us from stepping forward. We don't have that luxury. The other thing I'll just quickly add here is we've been talking this nonsense about whether one movement or one generation, there's a divide. This plays out in music. It plays out in business. It plays out in politics. We don't need to lean into that. When we lean into that, we lose focus. What we need to appreciate is, just as Dr. Duke said, she's been leaning into younger persons, myself included. Work that I get to do is because I was taught by her, taught by others who were leading the civil rights movement. It may be a different kind of movement. The foundation may look different. The civil rights movement was faith-based. That is not the story of the Black Lives Matter. But it doesn't mean that we're divided. But that old people get out of the way. That always happens. And then you see what happens when you leave old people out. Who's talking about, I'm sorry, but who's talking about Black Lives Matter today? Just think about it.
In keeping with the pace of how we overcome any division that may be thrown at us, or even the stereotype that's projected that we're always divided, especially as Black women in democracy and in politics, I really want to ask both of you how you have been able to push through some of your toughest times when you were trying to improve neighborhoods, improve communities, and also take care of yourselves so that this work can continue to be done. What advice would you give young African-American women and women of color to persist, right, through individual and collective setbacks?
Well, that's when I take my I was in Albany this morning at 10 o'clock for 2 press conferences, one on charter schools, NAACP, 10 years ago, said we don't tell parents where to send their children, but we believe public education for Black and brown children with the resources, good teachers, good. When you take a school system and make it two-tier, one for the rich and one for the poor, you come in and take my free space for my children. They can't have art classes, they can't have music. I am not going to fight with the parents who think choice. I'm going to fight with people who make policy about corporate grab. Understand? That's my conviction pill that I take. And then I'm taking my conviction pill about menthol cigarettes. Because my data tells me who's dying and who have died, because I've lost 5 members of my family from lung cancer because they were smokers. Cigarettes kill. And so now with the gum, raspberry, fruity stuff, we got kids 14 years of age and 15. Cigarettes. And who are they targeting? Our community again. The late Reverend Calvin O'Butts and his congregation 5 years ago had to go in Harlem and take down the signs because you could not drive unless you got in an accident. You look up and here's this beautiful Black woman with all her sequins and her bus out. To our community. They weren't on the east side. They were in Harlem. Spending the money. I'm saying put your money in something worthwhile for living, not for dying. And so that's the plot. And let me tell you, this notion about Black women can't get along, it's crazy. We just left a retreat. We are links. We just left a retreat where we just loved on each other. We had a pajama party, 3 days. We sat in our pajamas and we talked about family. We talked about our community. The links are all the women. The men come as our connecting. But we make the policy decisions. The Deltas, the AKAs, the Zetas, we making decisions. Don't buy that nonsense that we can't get along. That's crazy. It's crazy. These are my sisters. They come when I'm down. They lift me up. So yes, Black women get along. We make policy. We make good decisions for each other. Jennifer and I run around. She did something in New York City. When she called me, I said to myself, oh, this poor baby. She said, we're gonna fund, you tell it.
So we did some work together to ensure that we have the COVID vaccine be made readily available to African descent in communities across the state of New York because the numbers were very low and the vaccine was not easily accessible. And so I reached out to Mama Dukes and I said, I need you. I need you. The state has some funds they want to put out and I'm going to oversee the effort, but I need you to rally the NAACP to get out in communities where people are hesitant to, even consider the vaccine. And she moved like she always moves without hesitating. And because of her efforts, we also engaged the National Urban League as well as the National Action Network, our efforts contributed to a significant uptake in the vaccine. But that was that kind of coming together, and despite what people were saying could or could not be done, having this will and this belief that something more was possible. Mama Dukes talks about the 3 C's and reminds me that when I was younger, not going to say I was young, but I was younger, my father said that people would often say to him, is Jennifer going to run for office? And his response would be, no, because she doesn't know how to compromise. Another C, she doesn't know how to compromise. Way about 16 years ago. And I just wish I had an opportunity to talk with him now, because I sometimes wonder when he told people that I don't know how to compromise. I've been married for now 30 years, so clearly I know how to compromise. But when he was telling people that, or when he was telling me he was telling people that, was he sharing something he saw in me? Or was he teaching me that when you believe in something, do not waver, stay convicted, stay true to it? And I think that is what has served me well. I'll quickly share with you a story. Just very recently, I had serving as the chair of the New York City Racial Justice Commission, the first of its kind in the nation. In the wake of the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, former Mayor Bill de Blasio determined that the government needed to do something. Now, I had done some work and I'd written about the fact that everybody was, just feeling so positive despite what was happening in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, that people of all races, all ethnicities were taking to the streets around the nation and beyond, demonstrating that they were dissatisfied, that we were up in arms about the yet another killing of a person of color, a Black man, at the hands of police officers. I wrote about the fact that while I could feel some greater sense of hope for our society, there was a bit of a growing concern in me that if we were out there, let me say it differently, if we were talking about the slow death of children, Black children in New York City, in public schools across the nation, because Black children are dying every day in our public school system around the nation, would people come out? If we were talking about the deaths of Black and brown people, higher cancer rates, higher infant and maternal mortality rates, higher rates of obesity and diabetes that lead to early premature deaths. If we were talking about those issues, about how we suffer from greater environmental concerns, would we all be out there protesting in the streets? No, because when we start talking about inequities in education, people start saying, well, wait a minute. If we're going to make sure that your child has a better education, maybe that takes away a seat from my child. If we're going to talk about you hospital, maybe I don't get that bed. If we start talking about wages, does that take away something from me? So I wrote about it. And then the mayor and I talked about it. And he stood up a racial justice commission, appreciating that so much of the inequity that we experience still today is due to the structural foundations that allow for it. That our government, city, state, and national, allows for structural inequity, structural racism, structural sexism, misogyny, that allows inequity to persist, and that we cannot legislate nor policy and program our way out of structural injustice. So we stood up this Racial Justice Commission. People laughed at me, laughed in my face. What's this going to do? It's yet another commission. It's not going anywhere. When we put up 3 proposals to begin to dismantle structural racism in New York City, to change the foundation, to change the New York City Charter, the Constitution, one of my mentors in the work, looked at me when I presented her with another maybe 15 people with the proposals, looked me dead in my face and said, "You know you could fail." I didn't respond. She looked at me again as though I didn't hear her. We were in a small room, just a few of us in that room. "You know you could fail." In that moment, what I realized was we were about to do something she'd never even conceived of. That was unconscionable, because if we change the foundation, how government essentially has upheld structural injustice, if we change that foundation to hold government accountable for doing it differently, that can disrupt things, not just in New York City, but it can send a signal to the nation. I look back at her, going to, what do you do in these moments? And I said to her, if I do in this moment what I feel I've been purposed to do, I won't fail. Now, don't come out and vote for these proposals to change the New York City Constitution. They will have failed, but I will have done what I've been called and I was purposed to do. Lo and behold, the New York City, thank you, the New York City election was held. 3 proposals to change the Constitution, to establish that we're a multiracial democracy where, regardless of race and religion, any other identity, socioeconomic status, every New Yorker is entitled of education, housing, healthcare, the list goes on and on. That proposal passed. A proposal to establish a racial equity office with accountability that looks at every community district and says that every community district, regardless of socioeconomic status, should have quality schools, hospitals, safe and affordable housing. That passed with accountability measures. And a measure to establish the true cost of living, to begin to inform what fair wages are like, what they should be, regardless of your identity, what income support should be based on. That passed too. So we didn't fail. But it was community and that belief in something more, even when somebody's telling you it's not possible and you can fail.
Thank you for all of those great words, right? I think the other thing too is that we have to be brave. We can't fear failing, right? You know, failing is that opportunity that gets you closer to success all the time. And we have to keep that in mind, and we have to share that with the present generation and guide them and remind them that it's okay to dream big and go after it, because whether you achieve it or not, it influences somebody else, it inspires somebody else, and it puts other people on alert that there are African American women out there about these bigger ideas and trying to shape things and trying to change things and trying to bring better lives and communities for everyone who lives in them. Right? As we continue to go forward, this is our last question. And I saved it for last because it leaves us with something to really marinate on and be inspired by, even more than the wonderful words you shared so far. And so this question is, and to start with Dr. Dukes, who are the African American women in history, public, personal, well-known, or lesser known, who inspired you? And in what ways did they inspire you?
Well, I have to go to my grandmother. I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. And my grandmother, on my mom's side, she was known as a washwoman. She washed the clothes, ironed them. I mean, Mama could iron a shirt that could stand up without anybody in it. And I would walk with her to take the clothes to the people that she washed for and ironed. And in our walk, she would always say to me, we went through a white neighborhood one day, And the kids saw us coming and they started with, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch your nigga by his toe. If he holler, let him go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Well, 6 or 7-year-old child thought that was nothing. I mean, what were they talking about? You know, I used to clap my hand with Mary Mack and Sally Go Round the Sunshine. So I thought they had something too, you know, the little poem they were saying. And my grandmother, as we walked on, she said to me, "Did you hear those children?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, they were saying bad things." And she said, "They're bad people." She said, "I'm glad you didn't hear them because I want you to stay focused. I want you to remember that sticks and stones will break your bones. But words will never harm because if you get it up here, they'll take it away." And so she was my inspiration to never fail. Never fail. If you have the courage, the commitment, and the conviction, you go for it. And so her name is not in the book. We will never know Sarah Hopkins. But here is the granddaughter who remembered that and gave her the courage to go forward in what I believe in. And so she will never be in the history books. She will never get a chance to give the governor oath of office. Being a judge, they said, "Well, you can't swear in a governor. You're not a judge." I said, "Oh, no, watch me. Watch me." And so in my wildest dreams, when I go to sleep at night, I hear that voice ringing in me. And of course, the women who I have been able to sit with them. Shirley Chisholm was to be nominated by Congressman Dillon in Miami, Florida. Percy Sutton, the late Percy Sutton, who served as an assemblyman here, while we have so many education opportunities for Black and brown children here. Mr. Sutton came down the hallway and the aide was sitting outside Miss Chisholm's door. And he said, "Who's my lady today?" And the aide said, "Not so well." And Mr. Sutton said, "I'll go in." Shirley told him the story that the structure, the Democratic structure, said to Ron Dillon, who was a congressman from California, "If you nominate Shirley Chisholm, that'll be the end of your moving up." Mr. Sutton came out of the door, and there was the late Mary Pinkett, the late Helen Marshall, who was the board president of Queens, and there was the little girl named Hazel Dukes. That's the grandmother. And so Mr. Sutton looked at Mary Pinkett and myself, and he said, "I'm going to nominate Shirley Chisholm, and I want you all to second it." Well, I walked out on that stage in Miami, Florida. Conviction that yes, Shirley Chisholm could be nominated. Because if Shirley had never been nominated, Jesse would have never had the courage to run. Obama would have never been. So it's my second Shirley Chisholm nomination in Miami, Florida. It was the conviction that Sarah, who never went to school more than third grade, but had the courage to tell this little Black girl that America belonged to me because she worked so hard to make it what it was. And so that's my commitment. That's my dedication. I wake up every morning and I hear her voice and I say to myself, if I can help somebody as I pass along
then my living will not be in vain. See, if I sit at her feet as much and as often as I can, because every time I do, I'm further inspired and encouraged. Yeah, she talked about her grandparents, her grandmother, and I couldn't help but think. Similarly, for me, I had both of my grandmothers were married to very prominent Black men in their respective communities. My grandfather was a preacher, and Black preachers in the South were a big deal. Black preachers anywhere, right? Especially going back. And she wasn't out of the home, but she was like the fire underneath him. And one of the things is on my dad's side, one of the things that I remember is that when I moved into maybe my teens, whenever I would call to talk with grandma, she'd ask me what I was up to, and then she'd start telling me about what all my cousins were doing. And it always sounded like it was better than what I was doing, or bigger. And then I learned that she would do the same thing with them. And that was the way she created some healthy competition between us. So she had us moving. On my mother's side, my grandfather was the Black photographer in Louisville, Kentucky. And my grandmother, although she had a master's degree in math, she became his at-home business manager. And so there was always in my mind that this woman went to college in the early 30s, got a graduate degree, and yet she was at home. And there was something actually kind of powerful even in that. Fast forward, my mother married my father when she was 18, my greatest inspiration. Had dropped out of college to marry my father, had 4 children at 29 years of age, decided to go back to school and get her bachelor's degree. And at 38, my father and she divorced. Now, why is that significant? She had the white picket fence. She had the very prominent. Dr. Dukes can tell you, my dad was a national, international figure. She had all the trimmings that, first ladies, would want or have. She didn't have her voice. She didn't have herself. She needed that. My mother and father divorced. And within 2 years, my mother never had a job before. She became the first African American person to found and curate a corporate art collection. Fortune 100, she was the curator of the AT&T corporate art collection in its heyday. She traveled the world annually with a budget of better than $20 million, buying and commissioning works of art to hang all around the world in AT&T buildings. That is where you find inspiration. When you see somebody who didn't have voice and had to break through and make her way. That's where I've gotten my inspiration. And I've been fortunate to have a dad who actually poured into his daughters. Traditional, didn't see what he had to do for his wife. And fast forward, they recommitted after she went and she got her career. And he was like, oh, is that what that was about? Was my inspiration.
Thank you both for such heartfelt, honest, and I think really inspirational stories so close to our hearts that all of us can find, and hopefully we have, whether it's a grandmother or a sibling or a father or grandfather or even a teacher, right? That we have that kind of interpersonal connection with somebody who will inspire us, right? And build that fire. May I also ask, as we are wrapping up here, if you would repeat the names of your grandparents and the people that inspired you. And I ask you because I want it to be printed in the transcript so that your grandmother gets her name recorded in history.
grandmother was named Sarah, Sarah Hopkins, Hopson. On the record. 13.
Mary Elizabeth Jones and Elsa Elizabeth Barkley Brown. And my mother, Natalie Barkley Brown Jones.
Some. Thank you very much. I want to leave everybody with the last words to remember the 3 C's and maybe also add on with a 4th, creativity. Right? All of these, no compromise, right? All of the women, all of your comments were really about creativity as well, pushing past all those barriers and being inspired in all different ways by the people in our lives. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and also to remind everyone that at the end of the meeting, there will be questions for the panel. And there's also index cards outside on the table. So if you'd like to give feedback to the commission, you're able to write it on those cards and hand it in so the commission can consider that information at another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give another hand. So thank you, Dr. Burns, for that very helpful transition as well. We can take just a few questions that you might have for our panelists. Specifically, I want to lift, if anyone specifically has one for Commissioner Jones Austin. I don't know if you're still battling time. Okay, so we can take maybe a question for the panels. There was such a robust conversation, but also want to lift up, please do visit our website, use the comment cards outside to make sure that there is information that you want to share with or connect with our commission members, that we're able to take that as well. But if there's a mic here in the front being placed, if you'd like to come up and make a quick question of the panelists, who happen to be our commissioners as well, please do come to the mic. We can take just a few. Don't let that just a few make you feel like it has to be audacious. It can just be a good question. Thank you.
Well, first I want to say thank you to you ladies for everything that you poured into us this evening. It was a joy to sit and listen. Dr. Dukes, my mother is from Raymer, Alabama, which is about 35 miles outside of Montgomery. So it was, heartwarming and nostalgic to listen to your memories. I'd like to ask the question, I believe that for true and permanent change to come from a reconstruction of the U.S., the Constitution and its governmental structure has to be changed. And I think that the Supreme Court justices are the gatekeepers that uphold the systemic racism through the laws of the United States. What are your thoughts and advice to us as women and the community to make stride in these areas?
Well, I'll begin and share that never before has the Constitution anywhere in America reflected, or I should say incorporated, spoken to we the people as all the people, including Black and brown, indigenous persons, and never before. Interestingly, when we moved to change the charter, I learned that there were people of color, and I'm speaking about Black, that they voted said they were moved to tears because they'd never imagined a day when they would look at the possibility of changing a constitution and it really mean that they were included. So for me, what it looks like is raising up. This is an example of what needs to be done around the nation. Beginning, we can look at New York City. We're looking at other cities right now. How do you go in and change the constitution? They have to speak to we the people as everybody, because as they're currently constructed, the only way that they include everybody is if you first acknowledge all the harms that have been visited upon Black, Indigenous, and other persons of color, and then constitutionally determine that you're going to correct and impose those harms going forward. It's not simply we'll say it's we the people, and now we just did that. We haven't. You have to actually acknowledge it, name the problem, and do something about it. So I think that the making strides is using what we've now done in New York City
an example for the nation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please come right to the mic.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Thank you all so much. This has been such a phenomenal conversation. I'm sitting in the front. I'm like, I hope I don't cry, but I'm just so inspired by all of you. So thank you so much. My question is not as deep as the previous one, but I just want to know what gives you all joy, right? We talk a lot about being powerful Black women, strong Black women, but what gives you all joy and allows you to keep going?
You know, I have a saying that there's only going to be two things on the tombstone: the day that you were born and the day that you died. But I won't die because every Black and brown child, that I make sure that they receive the best of everything. That will be the living legacy. That when I see little boys and girls striving, pouring out their best, when I talk about Tamika Mallory, when I talk about Karen Boykin Towns and Rosalind Brock, you don't know those names. Ros was the youngest woman to be chairman of the national NAACP, 114-year-old. I poured into her. I just left California last week with Miss Mary Evers, Mary Evers' wife. I poured into her. She won the chair of the NAACP by one vote. One vote, because I orchestrated that campaign. The joy that I get when I see, when I was one of the ones, said to Jennifer, when she called me, we had just got through with the vaccine. I thought we had made it over. And then she come here talking about we got these proposals. I said to myself, I didn't tell her. I said, I know that these white folks on the east side ain't voting for this. And that night, when they said, you would have thought I was in the sanctified church. I did a dance.
Overwhelming majority of New Yorkers voted for the proposals. That was a proud moment.
Yes.
You know, for me,
That's bringing me joy.
that's joy. That's joy. And you know, there's a saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. That's not true. But the sentiment is the joy that I have when I get to move and use my voice and use the gifts that I've been given by God to try to bring about change in this world. The joy that I have knowing that when I go to sleep at night, that I didn't just live for myself, bigger than me. That every day I try to live with purpose. Joy comes from, joy is not simply, you know, there's a difference between joy and happiness. Every day is not a happy day.
Right.
But I can find joy. And if I'm blessed to live with purpose, greater joy. Greater joy. And the truth is that we all can have that if we center on something greater than ourselves. If we're only concerned with, you know, whether or not, you know, I'm pretty enough, I'm thin enough, whether or not I got enough money in the bank to do the thing. If it's all about me, you're not going to have joy. But if you use your life, the gifts that have been given you, the doors that have been opened that allow you to walk through, and you try to bring someone else along, you'll have some joy. That's where the joy comes from.
Thank you so much. I see your hand. Come to the mic. And this will be our last from the audience. Another reminder, are available.
Trying to make this short, but I don't know if their answers are gonna be. Okay, sure. I'm Assemblymember Stephanie Zimmerman. It's so good to see all of you, my leader. Son of African American children in the city of New York, we're not even talking about the state of New York, do not read on grade level. We are poised in the assembly to spend and send across the state $34 billion. We spend more on education than most countries, but still we have this statistic. We know that inequities have existed in the system since we landed here. And so, your brilliant minds, what is it that we need to do inside and outside and on the right and left side of the system to close this gap and to get our children exactly what they need?
Well, first of all, the question is, what are we going to do to close the gap, the education gap that continues even with the money that we get from city and state? You know, we spend more money on our children. It's poverty in Jennifer, that's a thing, she's been there all of her life. Poverty, parents working 2 and 3 jobs, unions, teachers want to go home at 3 o'clock, parents are at work, probably in one job and on the way to the next job. Caring and the nurturing of our children is not there from inside to outside. When I was growing up, my church, I was like Jennifer. I had 2 sets. Some was Methodist and some was Baptist. So I had 2 things. I went to BTU, that was the Baptist side. And then I went to the Birds of Promise, which was on the Methodist side. We had a community that cared about our children. We have young mothers who don't know how to parent. We have grandparents who don't want to be grandparents. They want to be friends. We got to look at this thing holistic. And then we have children who are living in poverty, not of their own. And so the resources that we need to meet and close the gap, we don't get enough. New York City don't get what Scarsdale get. New York City don't get what Roslyn get. That's why I moved to Roslyn with my son. Because there is such a great need, and until all of us begin to sit at the table, parents, we must bring the parents in. We must bring parents. And I don't mean the biological parent. I mean someone who just cares about Johnny and say, I'll stand in for him. I mean, when I was growing up, parents were always involved as auntie and the neighbors. I knew not to be nowhere when it got dark, but on the stoop. Okay? And I knew to watch my mouth coming down the street because if Miss Lucy heard me say something out of order, she wasn't going to wait to tell my mother. She would tell me she's going to wash my mouth out with soap. And I believe that. And so we have lost community. We've all lost the sense of purpose of children and what they need. And so that's our problem. It's just not the school system. It's all of losing community, losing parents, losing caring people who are not parents, but just believe that's the greatest resource is children that we have.
So I could not agree more, and I'll just add, I'll try to do this very quickly, that you take all that Dr. Dukes has spoken to, and then you add to that is both academic in nature and then it is environmental in nature. Recent research conducted by the New York University Research Alliance Center has demonstrated that African American and young persons of Hispanic origin who live in communities where there are higher rates of arrest and incarceration, not of them, but of friends and family in the community, that they suffer loss because of the vicarious trauma that they live and that they experience on a daily basis. A lot has been written, researched and written about adverse childhood experiences, how having an incarcerated parent, how being homeless, unhoused, how experiencing substance abuse in your home, in impoverished circumstances, how all of that contributes to your ability to connect and engage in an academic setting. So all of a part. But I think the other part that we often miss out on is that in America, overall, a broken education system. It is not just Black and brown children who are suffering academically. Children who are white are suffering too. We have a system that is not caught up with the times, a system that was designed such that only the top 5–10% would go on to college. They're even dreaming of going on to graduate school. We have a system that still today does not teach critical thinking. In America, you are lucky. You are most privileged if you are taught how to think critically in grade school. You're lucky if you get it in college. In the main, critical thinking is taught in graduate school. This is going to sound conspiratorial in nature, but think about it. How can we do the things as a society if we teach everybody to think critically? So it is by design. Remember, the public school system was set up in an industrial society. Not everybody was to go to college. We have not changed the way that we teach to play at a different level. At the same time, we devalue education. We don't pay our teachers what they should be paid. And so then we don't attract the best. So on the whole, overall, it's not just a Black, brown versus white problem. We have an educational, we are in a shambles. It's a debacle. And until nation, and it's all again steeped. Yes, racism plays a factor, but it's all steeped in unjust capitalist structures. Because if we start teaching children the way that we should, they now think critically and they can engage competitively. And that upsets the capitalist structure the way it's been designed. So first and foremost, we need to call out the gap between Black and brown and white children. But we should not get caught up in this game of a Black and brown versus white, because we're all suffering from a broken education system that is not serving children on the whole well.
We will take one final question from our moderator and then turn it over to our chair for closing. A reminder that the exhibits will remain, those who are still with us for them, for some time until 8 o'clock. There will be a closing of this space and room. But thank you all for being here. Final question and then remarks from our chair, Rodriguez.
Excellent. As this is Women's History Month, right, we thought it would be very wise to ask both of you, what advice would you give men, all men, of any race or ethnicity, every one of them, to support Black women's leadership?
There was some misinformation given out, and we all got How many of you know about Stacey Abrams in Georgia? Well, aside put out a misnomer that Black men was not going to support Stacey Abrams. We had people on the ground. There was a young woman named Jotika Edie that convinced Black women from every sector across the country on Sunday nights. And they did a poll. They took a poll. Donna Brazile, who was a political analyst, and those women who have been around, Leah Daughtry, they took a poll, and they found out it wasn't true. It was not true. Again, I don't think this is a black and white thing. What do they say about the white women who went to vote and home? Their husbands told them they couldn't vote. They had to go with Donald Trump. And so you saw the white women vote. You look across the state, the city council, as I said earlier, we have a speaker. When you look at the assembly and the Senate here in Albany, when you look across the country, Black women Black women in the legislature. And our men do support us. I have some of the greatest support of men. Then we have to stay focused on what our issues are and stop the division. We have no time for Black women, because Black men get killed too. Oh, real hell. In corporate America, in society as a whole. So we can't divide each other. We have the same struggle. First of all, just being Black, born Black, being Black, walking Black, talking Black. So there's no division. If it is, I want the men out of here.
So, you know, I'm just being honest. I'm sharing it all, right? I don't really have advice because a man who is not going to support women is not going to listen to my advice. So I'm a little kind of wasting my time trying to tell him how he should show up in the world. Right? I will tell you, okay, now I'm going to be really honest, and I may lose some people here. My most difficult moments leading with my voice have been had with white men and Black women. White men and Black women. White men who look at me like, who decided you should have something to say and that you should be confident in what you have to say? And all I think to myself is, you don't realize that I was raised by a man who, like said, he was the freest person on earth because his allegiance was to the cross and not to the flag. Raised, as Al Sharpton once said concerning my father, when people asked him, how do you take on governors and presidents? And he said, well, when you've been raised, because he was mentored by my dad, when you've been raised by a giant, it's hard to look up to midgets. So when that's in your head, you don't really look for validation from men. My greatest hurt has come from Black women who, because of internalized racism and sexism, will challenge me in ways that just move me to tears. How dare I believe as a Black woman that I have a voice, that what I believe and think matters, because we've been beaten down so much. How dare you? You don't have voice. And so all I try to do, I'm not trying to convert you. That's a waste of my time. I'm just trying to live with the voice and whatever platform I to do and say what I believe need be done. And maybe if I do what I'm called and purposed to do, maybe you'll come around. But I don't have time to try to convince you otherwise.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And now closing out our meeting today is our chair, Secretary Rodriguez.
Thank you all for being with us this evening. As you can see, why I have such a terrific job chairing this committee, this commission, because I have two wonderful commissioners, and actually there are 15 wonderful commissioners, but these two powerhouses are certainly demonstrating why they're on this commission, helping us to be leaders in formulating our roadmap moving forward. And of course, to the University of Albany, thank you for hosting us this evening. I just wanted to say we are so grateful for your hospitality as well as your presence and thoughtfulness here. But before folks go, I think it's really important that we tell you how to continue to stay involved. Now, and Assemblywoman Zimmerman, you already spoken and announced yourself, but I was going to give you the shout out anyway. Thank you for being here with us. Look at that. She's coming to Buffalo next in June. Come on. So yes, but to stay involved, yes, follow us across the state, please. That is part of the mission. It's important here. Your presence here tonight is what is fueling us, but we cannot be successful in our journey if we do not have public feedback and comment. So it is so important that you do that. Please reach out to us, fill out an index card, grab our QR code, send us a note. Feel free to hit us in social media. Pick whatever avenue is most readily available to you, but we are looking for and eager to receive your feedback. Take a look at our website for upcoming future meetings. Our next public one is going to be scheduled for June in Buffalo. Details to follow. And to our exhibitioners, please take a look. We're here till 8 o'clock. You can take a look and make sure that you visit the exhibits that are here. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for your participation. In these meetings, we try to provide knowledge and education as well as receive feedback on the work that we're doing. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of your evening.